Hello,
Hi, I'm Carlota.
and I'm Marie.
And if you've joined us previously, first of all, welcome to the podcast, No Frills Small Business Podcast.
Yes.
We originally tried to do this about 2 weeks ago, which now feels like 3 years ago. And due to technical difficulties, we just were not working out. The show didn't happen. So we're going to be talking today about making your next business conference the most amazing conference you've ever experienced, and not just because of the open bar.
Yeah, that's true. Not just because of the open bar. One of the reasons that we thought this was a good topic is because it just seems like, especially when you're a small business owner, you spend so much money to go to a conference because even if the registration fee is low and the travel costs are low, you're just not at work. And that's like losing however many hours of work. So we knew that, in order to go to an event, it has to bring value back to your business. Otherwise, you're really losing a lot of money. So it has to be an investment. And so we're thinking about kind of like what are the ways that you could make it the biggest investment. And we also have pretty different personalities. Wink, wink, if you haven't noticed. So, I'm more on the introvert side. Carlotta's more on the extrovert side. I'm a little bit more of a planner. Just a wee bit.
A little bit more of a planner. I would just say that
a wee bit more of a list maker. A little bit, yeah.
I mean, I also enjoy lists, but I feel like for me, a conference, if I go, it's more like I can be much more spontaneous because I enjoy networking. Yeah. I just don't think Marie shares my love of networking. So I think Marie wants to plan a little bit more. And so when we were talking about the show idea, basically we were like, let's do how both introverts and extroverts can get their money's worth out of conferences, because I'm sure that there's a lot of introverts who won't even go to conferences because they're like, I know I should go, but the thought of being there amongst all these people, it's like, it's terrifying. Yeah, it's overwhelming. Definitely. So we were going to kind of talk you through it. The summer's coming. In New York, we have spring. It's freezing. And this is a time when there's a lot of conferences. And if there's one or two that you're really thinking about, but you're anxious, we're going to get you through them.
Yeah. So I'll start with my plannerific approach to going to a conference. Because I am an introvert, also because I do love making lists. I'm just gonna put that out there. I try to plan ahead before I go to the conference and have a couple of goals for what I'm really trying to get out of it. And the reason for that for me is I get pretty overwhelmed fairly easily when I'm in big crowds. And so it's easy to just like retreat to your hotel room or leave early or just be like, oh, I'm going to hide in the bathroom. I cannot deal with this. So what I have to do is kind of create some things that I know I have to accomplish. And then once that's over, if I don't feel like talking to anyone, if I don't want to network anymore, I give myself permission to escape at that point in time. And so that's how I approach pretty much any networking event. So I always try to start with some type of, thing like that.
Well, can I just interrupt? When you say you give yourself a list of things you have to accomplish, do you have in your head, okay, I try to make it at least 3 items a day or 3 items for the whole conference?
It definitely varies. So it depends on what the event is and how. And that's the other thing. What's my reason for going? So some business events for me, the reason I'm going is to learn something. So maybe I'm trying to add something new to my business and I don't know something. So I'm going kind of like for professional development. So your main goal might be go to some workshops, listen to some speakers. So that could be your primary goal, and maybe networking in that instance isn't your main goal. Other conferences, you're going to meet people, to connect with people, to build connections that are going to grow your business, either with collaborations or potential vendors that you might work with, or if you're doing freelance work, somebody that you're going to pitch your work to, potential clients. So that's could be like a different goal. And then some conferences combine a lot of different things. You might want to network, you might also want to learn something. So I try to look through everything in advance to kind of figure out what's my main approach. And then what, like, if there's particular things I want to learn, making sure I figure out, when are those panels, when are those workshops, so I know I'm going to get there and I can kind of plan my day around it. If I want to meet people in general, or are there specific people I want to meet? So for instance, in the crochet and knitting industry, there's a big event called the Knit and Crochet Show, and they have a designer meet and greet where you can pitch your work to.
When is that?
It's in this year. It's in late July. So I'm not personally going this year, but I do know that a lot of times when people go for the first time, they don't realize that there's this designer meet and greet. So they don't bring a portfolio, and they're not aware that they could actually go right up to magazines and book publishers and be like, here's my stuff, publish me. And a lot of designers get a lot of work out of this show. But if you didn't know that, because maybe you didn't look at the website beforehand, maybe you didn't ask around beforehand, then you kind of missed that opportunity.
Wow.
So nowadays, with things being so connected, a lot of events will have a group before the event, either on Facebook or Google Plus. And so you can sort of just, even if you're just a fly on the wall, just peek in there and see what are people talking about. And some events even have orientations for new people, which kind of seems weird, but if it's a huge event, that could be really helpful too,
kind of good,
because it'll kind of say, hey, this is how things go here. So the event that I was at where we tried to do our live show is called New Media Expo, and I was telling Carlota before the show that this year was co-located with another event, National Association of Broadcasters, which had 100,000 people there. So it was a very large event.
I mean, you were even saying that the Podcasting Alley, people were having, which was a space specifically for podcasting, people were losing connectivity.
Yeah, so there was just so many people that, Wi-Fi was really stretched thin, and there was a lot of issues. And I was really glad that I had looked over the schedule beforehand, that I had talked to people in different groups I'm in to see who was going. So I had some idea of certain people I wanted to meet, certain workshops I wanted to see, because if I would have just shown up there with 100,000 people and a huge, like 4 huge convention rooms that had, literally thousands of vendors.
It would be terrifying.
And hundreds of workshops, I would have just been like, okay, I'm going back up to my hotel room.
And like lock the door and watch TV.
Yeah.
It would be.
So I was glad I did that kind of pre-work, even though, people thought I was crazy weeks beforehand when I'm looking through the workshops and stuff like that. But I went and I already said, okay, these are the things I must see. I must go to this workshop. I want to definitely meet this person. And then these are times where, I could do this or I could do that, and I'll sort of take it how it goes. So I met somebody at a meetup that I went to, and then we ended up, meeting some other people and going to some other different events. But I still kind of stuck to the workshops that I definitely wanted to go to. But I went to one with her that, I wasn't thinking of going to before, but it was nice chatting with her and kind of getting, because we're both podcasters, talking about issues with our show and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I'm not saying make a list so you're completely rigid, but if you have particular things, like you definitely want to meet this particular person, you're going to have to look for them, because in an event that's large, you may not see them. So you may have to go to their workshop so that afterwards you can go up and introduce yourself, because maybe you're not going to see them just wandering around the hotel or what have you.
I mean, I don't think lists are ever bad. I think the coach in me feels like list making can sometimes replace actually doing things, because trust me, there's been plenty of times. I was just teasing a client of mine, like, where one day a couple of weeks ago, I had this perfect to-do list, and I made the whole to-do list, and then I went back to bed.
Yeah.
And I spent the day in bed watching Netflix and being like, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm not doing it. I think that, though, in a situation like a conference, it's hugely overwhelming. You immediately, on a certain level, I feel like you're back to like being the new person the first day of school, and you get this impression, which is a false impression. Everybody else knows everyone else.
Sure.
Everyone else is somebody cool to hang out with, and you're just a loser. That's not true. But if making a list and organizing will make you think to yourself, okay, well, this is why I'm going to take these courses, to meet these people, to get this kind of knowledge, and also will help you organize what you need.
Right.
And I think we should also talk about that, like, what are some of the tools that people have to bring?
And even like clothes. If you don't look at the schedule, especially a multiple day conference, if there's an event like a gala, a big dinner, an award ceremony, and you only have jeans, let's say, you're not going to feel comfortable going to that event.
And that's a huge loss.
And maybe that would be the best place for you to meet somebody or talk with somebody about a certain thing. So,
exactly.
you know, for me, that's important because I also like to pack light. I'm not one of these people that takes like 10 suitcases and a wardrobe for a million years. I'm sort of saying, what are the basics I could jam into this one suitcase? So do I need a dress? Do I need whatever, you know,
heels?
Heels. Do I need this? Do I need that? Let me pack it all in. So that for me is part of the planning. But I agree, you can get overwhelmed and lost in the planning and just have a beautiful list and you do nothing.
And then you get to the hotel and then you get to the conference and you're like, wow, this hotel's really nice. I'm gonna
just go to the gym.
I've gone to I remember I've gone to some years ago working in a production company, we went to China to cover one of like the auto shows, and my hotel room, they had a flat screen TV above the tub.
Oh, that's not good.
It was very difficult for me to get anything done because I was in bed watching I was in the tub watching Chinese hip hop videos, and my, you know, boss back in the US was like, are you working? I was like, yeah.
Working
hard.
Getting things done.
Someone's editing, not me. God bless them. I do think, though, definitely another good reason, as Marie said, to look at the schedule is to also, as you said, to figure out what kind of clothing you need.
Yeah.
And clothing is a huge tool. So like your business cards. You should also be thinking, based on the schedule, you can think about what kind of pitch. Because you're going to meet people who maybe are your colleagues, maybe people whom you know. Well, you're going to talk to them differently, and you'll probably be comfortable enough that you don't need a pitch when you run into old friends. But let's say there's going to be somebody there who in your field whom you greatly admire.
Right.
Or somebody whom you would love to get some advice from. You are going to want to prepare something in your brain so that when you finally get to meet him or her, you're not like, oh my God, I love you so much, I can't say anything. I mean,
you want to say a little bit more.
You want to be a little bit more.
Although I do confess that I did have a moment where it's just like, I love your show. Okay, bye.
I mean, sometimes
but in general, yes, you want to say
you want to be
more.
able to present yourself so that you're not there like humming. I think that these are all, the more you really think about it, and especially, you know, we're coming at this from entrepreneurial small business, where for Marie or I, not being able to work for 3 or 4 days because you're at a conference, I mean, that's a significant, that's going to really affect me. So I have to come back from a conference and be like, I met so-and-so. I got these potential clients.
Right.
I got invited.
I learned this thing that's going to make me more money.
Exactly. You know, I got invited. I made contacts and they want me to give a workshop for them, because otherwise, you know, it's not like when I used to work for TV news and I could just submit the bills to somebody else. It's like, you have to be prepared. I think otherwise you're going to miss out on a ton of opportunities. But I did really want to stress, I think the best thing you can do to prepare is to just be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe the first conference you go to as an entrepreneur, as a burgeoning whatever, maybe just the fact that you went and you attended some workshops and you went to if you're able to, you went to a networking event, or you just went, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I went.
Yeah, when I was saying the goals, I'm not saying they have to be, you know, attend 52 workshops, meet 700 people, close 30 deals. You know, they can be really small goals. And, you know, I think it depends on where you are at that point in your business as well, if it's a busy time for you or not. The other thing I want to mention about preparing is, what are you doing before you go? So as we all know, when you take time away from work, you know, issues can happen depending on your type of business, whether you have clients that you're dealing with, whether you are blogging, whatever it is. So trying to, first of all, get as many things done as possible before you leave. So it may require that if you're going to be out of the office for a day, then you have to spread out that day's work, you know, in the prior week or several weeks before. You may also want to give yourself a cushion when you return. I know a lot of people don't do that, but for instance, this last conference I went to, it was in Las Vegas, and I tried so hard not to get onto West Coast time. I really was like, you know, going to bed early, doing all this stuff. But basically, after a couple days, it was over. I was on West Coast time. And then I came home and I was jet lagged and I was having trouble, you know, getting to bed and getting up in the morning. So luckily, I had put in a little bit of cushion so that it wasn't like the first day back I had to, you know, be at full pace, because that would have been really hard. So you kind of have to build in this time beforehand, if you can, by planning to sort of spread out whatever work you would have while you're away, and maybe a little bit before you leave and a little bit after you come back, into the prior weeks before you go. So whether that's like scheduling a blog post, whether that's having even things like an out of office message, whether it's alerting important clients, hey, I'm going to be traveling. I may not have, because the thing is, we all nowadays feel like we're supposed to have Wi-Fi everywhere,
constantly connected.
and we're constantly connected. But the reality was that in this particular conference that I was at, Wi-Fi was not very good, and I did not have Wi-Fi for a lot of the time, even though I thought I
frustrating.
would. So it's a good thing that I had told people in advance, hey, I'm going to be away. I'm not going to be available, because otherwise they would, I would have had, let's say, calls and other things going on that wouldn't have worked out. I mean, even our hangout didn't work out. We weren't the only ones. A lot of people were reporting that problem, but it's, if you have to kind of plan.
And it can be very frustrating. It can really make, I think that's the worst thing. Psychologically, it makes you feel out of the loop, and it makes you feel, it can make you then start doubting yourself, and you feel like you have to apologize to clients. I really do think it goes back to like have some patience with yourself, and also realize, I think as an entrepreneur, that for a small business owner, you can be productive in different ways.
Yeah, definitely.
To go to a conference and maybe you make one or two really interesting connections that might take you a couple of years to pay off. Like maybe it just starts where you meet somebody, you have a conversation, you start developing a friendship. I mean, I just started a new business deal with somebody I've known 3 or 4 years. And just last week we had a conversation where he was like, well, I was thinking about something like this. And I was like, oh, and you could do this. And that led to us starting a new partnership. But it took years of us
to get to that point.
Right, years of us just being on Facebook, liking each other's pages. So it's very important, I think, as a small business owner, if you're going to go to a conference, you have to make a decision that you're going to make it worthwhile. But you have to be patient enough with yourself and realize that worthwhile, you may not be able to guarantee.
Yeah.
You may come back and think like, well, I don't know if this conference was any good. I spent all this money and I just met 1 or 2 people. But what if those 1 or 2 people start inspiring you and getting you to think differently? And one of those 2 people introduces you 6 weeks later, 6 days later, 6 years later to somebody who you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
It really is all about how you're willing to let, this sounds so like corny and zen, but just let yourself experience it.
Yeah, definitely.
But you cannot decide like, well, when I used to go to conferences for like my huge Fortune 500 law firm, we would do this. Well, this is your small business, so you're not gonna have those resources. It's just you. You need to be healthy and you need to have some confidence. So for me, frequently when I go to these, the hotel has to have a gym. I have to work out, because if I don't start working out with the open bar, I'm like eating everything in sight, and then I start feeling gross, and then it's like, oh, I don't want to go to a networking event. I feel like I'm waddling, and that has a big psychological effect. So I think part of planning should also be, are you somebody who needs to go to the gym? Do you like to do yoga? Do you like to swim?
Right.
What is going to keep you feeling at peak physical and mental condition so that you can go out there and sell?
Yeah. And not only that, but also like the basics that people always forget in these things, like drinking water, staying hydrated, especially people don't realize, especially when you're traveling, you can really
you can get sick like
crazy
that.
Stuff to your body. So, just keeping hydrated, and you're also meeting people. So your heart is racing, you're talking maybe louder than usual, trying to project over a big, lots of people talking. So you're actually losing moisture like pretty quickly. So that's something. And even eating, I mean, usually, so for instance, I was staying at this hotel in Las Vegas, and, there was really not the full range of food options. Everyone says, oh, Vegas, they have all this stuff. It's like, I mean, it was really kind of heavy meat orientation, a lot of fried stuff. So it wasn't really the kind of thing I wanted to eat. So you're sort of eating not exactly like you would at home. Yeah. And so all of those things can affect you. So, if you can get to the gym, if you can stretch, if you can just make sure you keep water with you, all of those things definitely help. Another thing is, nowadays, a lot of events don't end when the event is over, especially if they have, a Facebook community or a Google Plus community. So even if you didn't get to meet every single person there, you can still connect with people afterwards. And so, like, for example, I think I mentioned that last year I went to the podcast movement and I was like really just there to learn. I basically said, I don't need to talk to anyone. If I can, that's great. But I really want to go on these workshops because it was before my podcast had launched. But through listening to people, I learned about all kinds of different online communities. And then afterwards, I could also, I can still meet them then is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to like lose your opportunity because you didn't talk to them at the event. So I would say, oh, hey, I was in your workshop and I thought this was really interesting. And then you can start that dialogue later. And the one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times the speakers at these events are also overwhelmed, because at the end of the workshop, 20 people rush up and want to talk to them.
At least.
And they may be not able to just walk around and enjoy the event because maybe everywhere they go, people are like, oh, you're an expert. Let me ask you 50 questions. So sometimes they appreciate having a little time to themselves. Like I recently was listening to a podcaster that I enjoy. And he basically said, when I go to this conference, I'm going to eat all my meals alone. And I usually do that with my fans, but it's really exhausting for me. So that's something I would, if you're listening, please, respect that. Yeah. And I thought, wow, that's really great that he's able to carve out that space for himself that he knows he needs. And so as as someone who enjoys his show, I was going to respect that as well, and not just sort of say, oh, there he is, let me run up to him, because I know he's trying to give himself that space. But that doesn't mean that you can't, you've lost your chance to ever communicate with that person. You want to say, hey, I did see your workshop. I didn't want to bother you afterwards, but this and that was really valuable. I have this question, whatever the case might be. So you can still continue those discussions at a more leisurely pace.
And I think, one great way you can do that, like, is on Twitter using hashtags.
Absolutely.
With your profile, like, for example, Marie and I are going to be at Blog Her 2015 this July. So if you look at my Twitter profile, I've put a hashtag, like, presenting at hashtag Blogger 2015. So if you're going to go to a conference and maybe you're feeling more extroverted, you could tweet out with the hashtag for the conference, like, hey, I'm going to be going to this conference. I'm really excited to meet other people. You're going to just tweet it out. See what happens. You can.
And a lot of times people will respond, I'm going to be there too. And then you're kind of talking to them before you even got there.
And then you make a plan to just, maybe you're going to have like coffee or maybe get a cocktail. You can tweet out afterward to the speakers if you think they did a good job. I'm not saying that all of them are automatically going to then say, you're amazing. But there's some of them, of course, will be like, well, thanks so much. And you can just, the dialogue, I think it's a matter of making a decision. I'm going to, I guess, put myself out there. I'm going to allow myself to use all of these resources. And part of a resource is enthusiasm and being excited. I think that if you really communicate why you're going to this conference to yourself, to others, to the speakers, to other people on Twitter, to other people on Facebook, passion always wins other people over.
And the other thing to realize is that most people don't follow up.
Yes.
And that's the reality. My God. As you know, as a small business owner, you're already 10 steps ahead of the next person.
Oh my God.
But, whenever I've gone to a conference, maybe it'll take me a couple weeks, but, after people that I actually met, I'll reach out to them on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Google. If I actually talk with someone at length, I might send them an email saying, oh, that conversation was great. Can you be on my show? Will you write a guest post for my blog? Whatever it is. And almost without a doubt, people always say, oh, wow, I forgot to get in touch with you. I haven't reached out. And I can tell you that I literally cannot count on my hands. Like, it's so few the times that somebody has followed up with me when I've met someone at an event and they say, oh yeah, I would love it if you would do this and that. I'm going to email you. And then you never hear from them. So most people do get pretty overwhelmed by events. They don't have a way of organizing their stuff.
They have no idea what they're doing.
And then they go home and it's like all thrown into a pile. Exactly. So for me, another thing that I do is I always write a note on the back of someone's business card if I get it, so that, because later you're like, who is this person? So I'll write whatever it was, if I met them or if I just picked up their card somewhere, what topic, if anything. So just a little, like 2 or 3 words. But then when you get home, you're oh, right, that was the person that said I could write a guest post on their blog, and they have this huge readership. So let me reach back out with them. So it's really helpful to do that. And the other thing a lot of people forget about at conferences is the vendors, you know, because people are always like, they're there selling their stuff, but they might have a great product that you want to try.
And a lot of them will give stuff away.
Yes, there's a lot of giveaways or discounts. A ton of
stuff.
And especially if you talk to them. So if you just go by their table,
treat them like a human.
Yes, exactly. If you just go by their table and shovel stuff into your hands, they're not going to say, "Oh, we have a show discount, 50% off," because they're like, "This is one of those people that's never going to do anything with this." Right. But if you actually talk to them, a lot of times they'll give you a freebie or a sample or a discount. And so if there's a particular product that you're considering for your business, you know, even doing the research on who are the vendors before you get there, that's going to help as well, because a lot of times those are really valuable too. And they're a lot of times neglected. It's like they sponsor the event basically.
Well, I think that people feel like, oh, you just are here to sell. And it's like, yeah, what a horrible thing.
Right.
What a horrible thing to want to make a profit. What I wanted to just also say, following up, this comes back to like LinkedIn is like my pet peeve, because so many people, and I get these as clients all the time, will have like 500 connections. Following up with somebody when you get a business card, Marie's completely right, make a note about it, but just connecting with somebody on LinkedIn, that is not technically following up. Right. Following up would be connecting with them on LinkedIn. If they have a website, check out their website. Read through their LinkedIn profile and see, why were you interested in this person? Send them an email, invite them out to have coffee, invite them, or you can, if you're not ready to do that yet, all right. So, you know, LinkedIn makes it very easy for you to compliment people if they change their profile photo, if they put up a status.
Right.
See what's going on in their life. And can you even, honestly, like, even if you can just say when somebody puts up a new profile photo, click a like on it. Great. And I would ask you, though,
then you sort of stay in their,
you're staying in their mind. But to just connect, to say to yourself, like, well, I went to this conference, I got 50 business cards, I connected with all of them on LinkedIn. No, you didn't. That's essentially like, it's just meaningless.
Yeah.
Connecting, much better to go to a conference and say, I got 5 business cards.
Right. And I talked to those
and I had 5 real conversations. And I'm having lunch with all 5 of those people. Networking takes a lot of time. And to have 5 real conversations and to have coffee with those 5 people or have lunch and to really know what you're looking for and why you wanted to connect with people, that's how a conference can change your life.
Absolutely.
But it drives me insane. I'll see this, as I said, I'll see this in potential clients. They'll come to me, they'll be like, well, I'm trying to get a job in X field, but I don't know anyone. And then I'm like, well, go through your LinkedIn connections. And they're like, okay, well, it turns out I have 100 connections in the field.
Right.
I'm like, have you ever reached, do you understand, like this, that to me, it's like, no, you don't understand networking. So, you know, understand that it's not about numbers. It's about how you follow through.
And the connection.
It's about the connection. It's about the content. But it really does begin with you understanding, why am I going to this conference? What do I want? It's not the conference's responsibility. It's not anyone else's responsibility to guide you. It's your responsibility. I feel I'm starting to sound like some grumpy old man, but
no, it's true. And I think that
you can get out as much or as little as you allow yourself to.
And the thing is, you know, conferences are not all great.
No.
There's plenty of conferences that are bad, poorly organized, you know, things don't work out, whatever the case is. But if you go in with that attitude of, I'm going to get these things from it, you're going to always have a good experience and a valuable experience from that conference. So, you know, interestingly on this note, after the conference that I just came from, which I thought was, you know, huge and overwhelming, but I kind of went there with a very specific goal of what I wanted, and I got that and more out of it. I read someone else's sort of post-event blog post, and the person was saying that they went in with an attitude like, why are the 2 shows combined this year? I wanted it to be just a small show. And that they just went in like, oh, it's too big. It's too big. I can't find anyone. I don't know what I'm doing. And they were upset about the whole time. And then they thought it was a terrible conference. And then they came back home and they went and saw how all these people were tweeting all this great stuff that they did with the hashtag for the event. You know, people they met, great experiences they had. And then they started realizing, wait a minute, I sabotaged myself on this event. This wasn't the event's fault. This was my fault because I went in like, oh, this event is not going to be any good. It's not worth my time, and I'm not going to engage with it. And so,
and they made it.
They made it. There are plenty of events, and I used to do event planning, so I mean, I have a high bar for what I expect. There are plenty of events that are poorly planned, that there are a lot of things that go wrong, that they could have been better, that if you're objectively speaking, they charge you too much money, whatever it is. But if you go in there determined to get something of value for your business, you will.
I think that's but that's also, I mean, for conferences, it's for life.
Yeah.
If you go in, you'll see people who, like, I'm a native New Yorker, I have my own love, hate, loathe relationship with the city, and I'll be like tweeting out something grumpy about it, and other people will be like, "Oh, New York's awesome." Yeah, it can be great. It depends on my mood. If you know going into a conference, if you're really dreading it, maybe you just shouldn't go.
Yeah, that's true too.
If you're
save yourself the money and invest it in something else.
Because also for your career, like, let's face it, if you go to a conference and you have a bad attitude, you're pissed off, you alienate people in your field. Now with social media, your reputation can be damaged very quickly.
That's true.
If you go to a conference and you get drunk and you say things.
Yeah, that's true too.
I would really, if this may just be, sometimes the best thing you can do is understand, what, I've got personal stuff going on in my life, or
this event is not well timed.
It's not, this is not going to be right for me. That conference, it's going to happen next year. Better to go when you can basically master yourself and be like, I'm here for a reason. I'm here to be fun. I'm here to be charming. I'm here to be professional. And maybe also, depending on your personality, you may have to, like that host Marie was talking about, plan your day. So like, okay, you go to the gym, or you go running, or you go swimming, and then you go network, and that's your job. And then at the end of that, a certain period, maybe you go back to your room and you have some quiet time.
Sure.
You turn the phone off. You don't check your email. You meditate. You go for another swim. You do whatever it takes so that when you're at the conference in the public eye, people are like, wow, you're so much fun. You're so charming. It doesn't mean, and maybe in your hotel room, you're screaming profanities into your pillow. Fine. Nobody has to know about that. But you have to really, to quote the rappers, get your mind right.
Yeah.
Because it's up to you to decide, this is either going to be useful, or, oh my gosh, I just spent $3,500. And for a small business owner, and I was not making any money while I was there. And that can destroy your business.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Your attitude and taking that time to refresh yourself,
I think
so
that's
that you can sort of, especially in a multi-day event. In a one-day event, it's not a huge deal.
Right.
You can sort of power through, but if it's a multi-day event, it's definitely required.
You have to. And that's why I think also for a multi-day event, like if you're going to go and you really need to keep things low cost and you get the chance to share a room with a stranger, I don't know about you, but like I would need my personal space. I would need to be able to come back to my hotel room and just be relaxed and not have to be charming and make small talk and deal with somebody else being like, does one human need all the skin cream? Yes, I need all of my stuff. So I need all of it. Don't touch it. Don't even look at it. So maybe that's when you have to think to yourself, okay, well, the conference is going to be at this hotel. I can only afford to stay there if I have a roommate. Should I maybe find another cheaper hotel and stay down the block, stay across town? Who has to know? Nobody has to know. Like, basically you have to take responsibility and know yourself and understand, are you going to be totally fine living with a stranger and being like, woo, party? Or are you going to be like, I will kill, like, what if your hotel roommate is snoring and you can't get any sleep? And then you're furious all day and you're in a bad mood and you have the opportunity to go network with people, and in your head all you're thinking is like,
I'm tired,
I'm exhausted. And then you just realize, I saved money, but I really lost more than I saved because I didn't get any sleep. I didn't network. I felt like shit and I looked like shit. Pardon my language.
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of related to that is, in most conference scenarios, the earlier you plan, you're in a better financial situation. So usually there's an early bird discount, first off, that could sometimes be as much as half off the registration. Even the conference hotels, which are usually more expensive than a nearby hotel, are usually cheaper if you book them right away. And so, there's a lot of reasons to kind of pre-plan. And then, of course, you can adjust your work schedule further in advance so that you're not the week before, throwing everything together to try to cover for the week that you'll be away. But so as far in advance as you can plan, that's always, I think, a benefit. I have mixed feelings about not staying in the conference hotel. And again, I think this is obviously a personal choice. Almost without a doubt, it's going to be cheaper to stay somewhere else. So if you're really strapped, usually it's better to stay somewhere else. But I think it depends a little bit on the size of the event and what exactly are you doing there. So if it's a very large event like this one that I went to, the amount of walking, I mean, I can't even tell you, it took probably 20 minutes to get back to my hotel room from the furthest away.
Wow.
It was in the
same hotel.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it was adjoining the convention center, but it just was such a long walk. And then to think that, I would walk all the way out for 15 minutes and then get in a cab or go to another hotel. I think I really made the best choice in staying with that hotel. And I didn't know when I registered that it was going to be this large. I didn't really understand the magnitude, but I'm really glad that I did that. So if you have an event where there's going to be a lot of walking or a lot of late night activity, or it's a really stretched out day, then you might want to say, you know what, can I just put in the extra money because it's worth it not to deal with that? Or if you are either, you're going to be tabling or doing something there, then I think it's really tough because you need your rest because you're on like double time.
You got to sell.
Yeah, you got to sell.
Yeah.
And at the same thing, I heard a bunch of people saying, oh, I stayed in this cheaper hotel and I didn't realize how big the event was going to be. And then I had to carry this huge bag with me, to bring all my stuff. And because it was a podcasting thing, people are bringing their microphone and their camera and all this stuff, and you're schlepping, and they just were sort of like, this was not worth the money I saved. So, sometimes it's back and forth. So it's like, I guess what we're saying is kind of look at the specific event and
in advance and know yourself,
like how much space do you need, because a lot of extroverts love staying in a hotel room with someone else. There'll be not all of them, but there are people.
I'm an extra. I would.
Well, like for example, to go back to the knit and crochet show, I constantly hear people saying, oh, I'm so glad I shared a room with so-and-so. We finally got to meet. It's a great time. But these are people you kind of knew online beforehand, and maybe they snore or whatever, but you're going to forgive them because you kind of like them. But, that's a little bit different than, hey, anybody want to be my roommate? And you have no idea who this person is. You have no connection with them. So, there's all kinds of different approaches to events. But I think, you have to know what works for you. Are you a person who loves meeting new people and like pretty much no matter who would be your roommate, that would be fun and adventurous? Then have a roommate. If you're a person who's like, I absolutely need my space, but my budget is really tight, then stay at the hotel that's further away, that's cheaper by yourself. But just understand, you are going to have to get up a little bit earlier. You're going to have to maybe travel a little bit more. And the other thing is this is what I always say, find out what transportation is like in the area. Because a lot of times staying away from the hotel, you're going to spend as much as you're saving in the room to get to the hotel. So like I went to
rent a car.
I went to a conference in Dallas, and when I took the bus, it was really affordable. But the bus doesn't run like in New York City. It doesn't run every 5 minutes or whatever.
You need to preface these comments. She's a native New Yorker, so she does not drive, because I'm sure people are there like,
well, but even then, if you have to rent a car, it's expensive. And if you take a cab, it's expensive.
Well,
so if you think about it, if your hotel room is $40 less per night, but you're spending $30 in taxi fare
and car,
is it worth the $10? Yeah. Maybe then once you really think about it, for $10 more, you'd rather just stay in the conference hotel. So it's basically kind of understanding the event and doing the math for yourself and what makes sense for your business. I think that's one thing. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is just ways to save money on events in general. So we had already talked about early bird discounts, so obviously planning ahead. A lot of events will have volunteers that can have discount, either totally free or partially free admission. So if you're really intent on going to a certain kind of event, but it's really out of your budget, that's something you should really get in touch with the organizers and ask about, because a lot of events will have people doing registration that are volunteers. And so maybe you might work a few hours in exchange for getting free admission or partially free admission or access to the vendor floor or access to panel sessions or whatever it is. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then also a lot of events are, they have arrangements, marketing arrangements with other businesses. So can you get a discount because you're in a certain professional organization, or can you get a discount because even though you're a small business owner and you're not going to be able to say, well, I work for Chevy, what's the Chevy discount? A lot of times you can still be eligible for different kinds of discounts.
Oh, I mean,
so that's something to keep in mind too.
Very true. One thing that worked for me, this was Marie and I did Social Media Week. We hosted something this year, but last year for Social Media Week, I wanted to go, and I found out about it far too late. And I think that the ticket prices were, it was like a week, it was very expensive, and I just couldn't afford it. And then I happened to see, because I was following them on Twitter, that Nokia, one of their sponsors, was having a Nokia scholarship where you had to answer a question about why should you get a free ticket, basically what how did social media affect you, or what was your impact. And I was like, what, it can't hurt. And I sent off my essay and I won. And so I got a free pass. So I would definitely, when you're researching the event, are there free scholarships? Are there things for if you're AAA, does AAA will have deals sometimes. Does your alumni association, like I have my law degree from Indiana University is a huge university. So really, if the conference is important to you, before you decide like, oh, I have no money, that attitude as an entrepreneur is not going to work. You're going to have to hustle, and you're going to have to see. If nothing else, this might seem kind of like ghetto. You could really crowdfund.
Yeah.
What if there's no?
I've seen people doing that.
You could say, like, listen, for me, I really need to go to this. I need to raise X amount of, and so you'd have to really sit down and figure out how much money do I need. You might want to crowdfund. I mean,
and if you're going to crowdfund, the one thing I would suggest, because I've seen this more and more lately, how are you going to offer value to people that are giving you money? It's not just give me money, because give me money, that's not crowdfunding. That's begging for money.
Right, exactly.
So if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to go to this workshop, or I'm going to go to this conference, if you fund me, I'm going to write X blog posts talking about what I learned. I'm going to turn around and have my own workshop based on what I learned. I'm going to do a Google Hangout afterwards and tell you the 5 best things I learned. Give some value back to your funders. Don't just be like, give me money to go to this conference because I'm adorable. Yeah, that doesn't work. So I think if you're going to do that, if you look at the crowdfunding efforts that work, usually they're adding some value to their audience. So do that yourself. Add some value by saying, hey, this is what I'm going to offer you back.
And then if you're really going to do, and I actually think that could be a great idea, especially depending on the type of conference. Like
and your type of business.
And what your type of business, like if you're then going to turn around and say, well, I went to like this knitting thing, and I'm going to come back and knit like this great, or I'm going to teach some courses for teenagers at risk, blah, blah, blah. But you're going to have to really know your budget, and you're going to have to set it enough in advance. Don't decide.
Yeah, don't come the week before.
And be
give
like,
me $2,000 for this conference.
Be realistic. Do your research. Look and see what grants are there. Look and see what money there. Can you volunteer? Can you share a room? Like, I don't know. Figure something out. But as an entrepreneur, you're going to have to get used to hustling.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the longest. You're going to have to hustle.
Finding sponsors and all that. So that I think is a huge
I think actually that's I think you could actually have a lot of fun doing that. But again, I really do think any conference can be useful, even the most horrendously organized conference, if you make a decision. I can't control anyone else, but I know why I'm going. And much better, in my opinion, to come back from a conference like I went to 2 or 3 really good workshops, and I have 5 contacts that I'm going to follow up with.
Right.
Bingo.
Right.
That to me, I'd be like, that was a successful conference.
Yeah.
And then save all of your seats.
Yeah.
Everything.
Save everything for your taxes, obviously. On the other hand, be aware, because some of us are very frugal, like especially when we travel. Sometimes what you may discover when you do your taxes is you can actually claim a standard amount for traveling, and you might be spending less because you're so frugal. So let's say the IRS this year says, people traveling, they can spend $70 a day on food, or, you know, whatever the amount is. And you're eating like, you know, a granola bar and the lunch at the conference, and for dinner, you're eating a fruit roll up. Because let's be real, some of us are doing that as entrepreneurs. If that's you, when you get to your taxes, you can still say whatever the IRS amount is. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a tax accountant, but that's what people, you know, are considered the normal amount. So save all your receipts, but also be aware that when tax time comes, maybe there's some adjustment,
discrepancy,
because you are only eating granola bars and a normal person is eating at restaurants.
A normal person's having like a real meal.
Right, because all of those amounts are based on people that work for employers. They're not based on, you know, small one-person businesses that
maybe spent all of their money desperately trying to get there. I do think that we could go back to another point where you were talking about vendors. It goes back to really like, it doesn't matter how high your aspirations, or introverts versus extroverts. If you just go there and treat people like humans.
Absolutely.
And just talk to people the way you want to be spoken to. Of course, there's going to be idiots. Of course, that's what life is. But if you allow yourself to be open and to be fun, you probably are going to be surprised. I mean, there's a reason, I'm guessing, you chose a certain industry.
Right, right.
So I'm guessing that you're going to meet people who share things with you. Immediately in my head, I'm thinking about certain industries where I'd be like, oh, dear God. But I think on the whole, like if you're involved in an industry because you're passionate about it, and you just let yourself relax and be open to the experience, maybe the best lesson you can learn is it's like, wow, there's a lot of interesting people in the world, and I can meet them, and wow. Okay, I don't have to be so intimidated by my own hangups. I think that could be a very profound thing when you come back and you feel empowered and you have confidence. That can really change the course of your business, because that's what successful entrepreneurs have. They have confidence, if nothing else. I mean, like as I said, we started this podcast with more moxie than money. So I don't think that there's any rules. It's just about knowing yourself and allowing yourself to have fun.
Definitely. And to go back to the vendors,
you
know, one of the things that was a highlight for me at this conference, which I did not plan at all, was that GoPro was there, the folks that make those action sports cameras. And I've always wondered if they would be any good for crochet and knitting tutorials, but none of the photography stores in New York City that let you borrow cameras, they don't offer this camera. So I've never been able to try it.
They don't offer it in New York?
Well, no, it's like, you know, how like Adorama or something, you can borrow a Nikon.
Right.
They don't have that as a rental camera. So you couldn't try it out, really. And I didn't want to spend the money to try it out. So I went to their booth and I asked the guy, I said, I know you guys are all about action sports, but I'm really wondering if this would work.
Extreme crochet.
Right, for my extreme knitting, you know, can I try it? And the guy, you know, I went during a quieter time. I went to a quieter time, and when I went the first time, it was really crowded, and the guy was like, yeah, it's going to work. And he kind of brushed me off. But then I went later when it was super quiet, and another gentleman that was working at the booth actually not only let me try multiple mounts.
Wow.
Actually took the video that I made and put it up on one of the large screens. And another guy showed me how to use the editing software. I mean, they really, really were very kind and nice, because that's what they're there to do, is sell their product, obviously. And this was a product that I've known about for many years, but would never purchase because, you know, I didn't know if it would work. And now I was able to find out it does work for me.
Do you have the extreme crochet, extreme knitting?
I'm going to have one.
You're going to have to
But I guess my point is that the vendors often will do, it's not just, you know, you're dealing with the actual company. It's not like going to a retail store where they have 100 different things. So a lot of times you can get really nitty gritty into how that product might work for your industry, for your particular thing. The best thing to do, though, is try to approach the vendors when it's a little bit quieter. When it's really busy, they're going to give you, you know, the shortest possible answer. But if you go like, you know, when it's kind of quiet at the end of the day, a lot of times they'll let you try things out. A lot of times they'll get into a lot more depth, you know, where you can give them your exact scenario on how you might use it, and they can give you really more detailed information. So that's another thing to keep in mind, because, you know, when do we really get to have like product demos of different things? Even when you get a free trial online, it's not like the technicians
they're not there
walking you through the program. So don't forget the vendors is what I guess I'm trying
I
to
also
say, because a lot of times, you know, if you're considering buying something, that's really the way to figure out if it's going to work for you.
I also think, as Marie was saying, that's a great time when things are quieter. If there's a company that you're really interested in and you really think that like maybe they would be a good sponsor for you, or maybe you want to, you know, that's a great time to go there and introduce yourself and basically you'd have to have a pitch. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is why I think there's so much synergy between our brands. I mean, you know, they may say no, but really that's all they could do is say no. I know myself, when people come forward to me and they have a pitch, if it's clear that they understand what my company is and they're passionate about it, to me, it's like, wow, you took the time to think about this.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that a lot of companies might give you more than the time of day. I have to just say, when you said the GoPro thing, I was like, extreme knitting is the most awesome thing ever.
And on a giant screen, everything looks extreme. That's what I'm going to tell you, because when they put it on the big screen and you see the hands knitting, it was like, now I feel like I'm a mountain climber,
but
you know?
Didn't you want to see what I would want to do is get one of those for the cats?
Well, once I have one, we can all use it, right? The cat can have the head mount. I can use the chest mount. You know, we can also have the bike mount.
Amazing. We're putting like one of the cats in this podcast, and it'll just be a video of the cat being like, "Get this off me!" I love that.
But yeah, anyway, to be more serious, I think that was a totally great example. But yeah, so don't forget, you know, the vendors, the organizers.
Yeah,
that's the other thing I didn't mention, organizers. If you can find the organizers, it's hard when it's a huge event.
Right.
But if it's a small to medium-sized event, if you can actually find the organizers and go up and thank them and just put your face there.
Wow. Brownie points.
But maybe then, you know, next year you're going to be a speaker or something because they know you.
Boom. True.
Yeah.
Especially besides that, if you're tweeting.
Them, not when you say, oh, this event
this sucks. You could not organize my cat's using a litter box. But if you thank them in person and you're the person, you get there like, they're going to be on Twitter, of course. Yes. They're going to be on Twitter. They're going to be on Facebook. And you're the person on Twitter being like, hey, shout out to so-and-so for planning something. I mean, this sounds so corny, but people really do people remember that kind of stuff.
Sure.
They remember the person who like thanked them, and they remember the person who humiliated them.
Yeah.
So I think if it's a conference where you yourself are thinking a couple of years from now, I want to be a speaker here, I think I can bring a lot to this industry, it's never too soon to start making yourself agreeable.
That's right.
And as my grandmother would have said in Spanish, I don't know how to say it in Spanish, but basically you get more with sugar than you do with salt.
Yeah.
You want people to remember you as like, wow, she was so much fun. She was really smart. Not as like, God.
And even when you have feedback, you know, try to frame it in a more positive way.
Right.
Again, like, you know, instead of saying, oh, the food was terrible, you know, why'd you do it like that? You know, you could say, wow, you know, I know this great restaurant in the area that does catering, and I think, you know, people would love it. Exactly. Would you like me to connect you guys, you know, for next year's event? Or, you know, just thinking more positively. And again, if you want to be involved, what can you offer? So I noticed people weren't live tweeting at the event. You know, next year, would you like a volunteer? I'd be happy to come and be the live tweeter. I'll go to every workshop, you know, so whatever.
Oh, they would love you.
Whatever it is that you can offer, try to offer your criticism in a more positive way. You can go home and gripe with your friends and, you know, whatever, but try to keep that professional face on, because you're, you know, ultimately you're trying to get whatever opportunities you can.
And ultimately it's a small industry, but I completely just back up everything Marie says, because in my own experience, like there's a fairly big group here in New York that also does career development. And I had gone to one of their workshops. It was frankly horrendously organized. And I really wanted to write something for them. And I sent the woman in charge an email introducing myself, nothing. Okay. She did connect with me on LinkedIn, and we had spoken at the workshop. And one of the reasons that the workshop had been so poorly organized was that the space was really trying to force us out of there before it was done. They were very rude. And so I sent her another email saying, I also wanted to make sure you knew about this space. You can host stuff there. I know people. I'm very happy to introduce you. Immediately she responded. And immediately she was like, oh, I think you said that you wanted to write something for us. As soon as I offered her something, she was 1,000% more receptive. And, you know, you can understand that she's having people ask her for favors all day long. And here's somebody saying, well, how can I help you?
Right.
This does sound kind of corny, but it's like the lessons you learn in nursery school are what will help your career. I mean, help others. Don't always make it about you.
Yeah.
And try and be respectful. I'm sure, like going back to that host who was saying, I'm going to be eating alone. I have no doubt that there were people who listened to the same program and saw him eating alone and were like, well, I know he said that, but
let me just bother him.
Let me just go over there and like tell him my story and get all this free advice. And it's like, you know, this poor man, like he just.
And this particular person, he speaks at a lot of conferences and events, and he was saying, you know, it's just getting really overwhelming. If you want to talk to me, can you come after my session? I'll be happy to talk to anyone after that. But like, please let me eat in peace. And you're right. I'm sure there are people that sort of were like, oh,
well, I know he doesn't want them to disturb, but me,
I'm more important.
It's so important. And it's like, dear God, he must just, and he can't, you know, of course he can't be like,
get away, I want to eat alone.
He probably is like living in his hotel room with the door barricaded. But I do feel like maybe the overall lesson again is take responsibility, allow yourself to succeed by taking enough time in advance of the conference to really think about, why am I going? What are my goals? Why do I think this conference is going to further my goals? Is it because of the education? Is it because of the networking? How?
Is it because of the vendors who may be sponsors or I need samples or whatever it is?
I mean, literally, if necessary, write all of this out in a Microsoft Word document, because that way when you can think about it, you can work backwards from your goals. Because otherwise, it's so easy to be like, well, I'm going to go to this conference and be like on fire and I'm going to meet all these people. And then you get there and there's 20,000 other people and it's like,
I just go back upstairs.
I'm going to go
I'll just watch Netflix in the hotel room.
Exactly. And then you realize, like, and then at the end of the conference, everybody else is on Twitter being like, oh my God, I got married and met my best friend there. And oh my God, and I got a book deal and I'm going to like go hike around the world. And you're just there like, come on.
Yeah. So to avoid that, a little pre-planning is always helpful. And so that pretty much brings us to the end of today's episode. I do want to mention that we'll have the audio file available relatively soon. We'll probably edit the video a little bit, and you can find all the details at nofrillsmallbusiness.com/3. And then our next live hangout is actually going to be, I'm going to consult the calendar to be sure.
May 11th.
May 11th. Okay, fine. You can remember
when we're
dates.
talking about collaborating.
Oh, well, that's our
cooperation.
She can remember dates, and I can't. So there you go. But yeah, we wanted to talk about collaborating, working with others. A big thing these days, and whether that's like an actual business partner,
whether that's an actual thing, is working with others a thing? I've heard about this. Seems weird.
This collaboration thing.
It's a white person thing.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about collaborating with others, either whether that's like an actual partnership, or if it's even just you know, like consultants that you might work with for your own
getting
business.
Advice.
Yeah, getting advice from, you know, specialists or other people. How do you actually work with them to make that relationship, you know, fruitful? Because, again, a lot of models that we're all familiar with is from working for someone else.
Right.
So how does this big company collaborate with some other big company? It's not about how does my small business collaborate with other people.
And also, I think it's the difference between maybe being in a team that you didn't control, and you
making your own team.
You making your own team, you having an idea, and you trying to think to yourself, well, I could bring this. Who can do it? And I mean, Maria and I, as you know, if you've been listening to this, we've known each other for a long time. That does not mean it's always rainbows.
Not always sunshine and roses. Hold on, wait a minute. Nobody informed me.
So, that's just weird, but it's not always.
You don't know what happens.
Extreme crochet. I'm bringing one of the cats, and I'm going to put that goddamn helmet on it and be like, be a cat. But I just feel like sometimes it's easier, I think, almost to collaborate with strangers.
Yeah.
Because with friends, with family, there's so much behind the scenes emotional drama. But collaboration and being able to work together, and especially what happens when you have similar goals, but very different ways of life, different ways of using social media, different ways of relating to other people. So We're going to collaborate.
We're going to talk about that.
We're going to collaborate on making a great collaboration, and we hope you'll join us on May 11th at 1 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. Thank you so much. And we will send out the invitation soon. We'll also have the link to that episode will be at nofrillsmallbusiness.com/4. So if you are listening to this in the future, you'll be able to find that episode there. So thanks so much and have a wonderful month. We'll see you back here in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.